The crisp October air hung thick with the scent of old money and betrayal. Justin Hayes checked his reflection in the darkened window of the limousine, not to fix his tie, but to admire the man who was about to burn his old life to the ground. Beside him, his beautiful, nervous mistress, Sarah, clutched his hand. Tonight was his 10th wedding anniversary, and he was bringing her to the party. He smiled, thinking of his wife, Emilia, thinking of her billionaire father. He believed he was the wolf walking into the sheep's den. He never realized he was the lamb walking into the abattoir. The weight of Justin Hayes's ambition was matched only by the weight of the platinum 10th anniversary Rolex on his wrist. It was a gift from his wife, Emilia, delivered by a courier that morning to his downtown corner office, an office that, like everything else in his life, was paid for by her father. He glanced at it, then at the woman sitting across from him at the ludicrously expensive French restaurant. "It's heavy," he said, a slight sneer playing on his lips. Sarah Jenkins, whose youthful beauty was a stark, jarring contrast to the studied elegance he'd left at home, mistook his disdain for appreciation. "It's beautiful, Justin. She has good taste." "She has her father's taste," Justin corrected, swirling the Bordeaux in his glass. "Everything is a transaction, Sarah. A purchase." "This watch. It's not a gift, it's an invoice, a reminder of who owns me." Sarah reached across the table, her manicured fingers tracing the veins on his hand. "Not tonight. Tonight you show them you are your own man. You're the one who quadrupled the Braxton division's profits. You did that, not him." Justin smiled. This is what he craved. Not just admiration, but validation. Sarah was a junior marketing analyst at Hawthorne Global, the behemoth conglomerate owned by his father-in-law, Marcus Hawthorne. She saw him as a titan, a brilliant executive trapped by a cold dynastic marriage. He had meticulously crafted that narrative. "Tonight is the party," Justin said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "At the estate. Our anniversary." Sarah's face fell. "Oh, I thought you were ending it. You said after the quarterly review I am." He leaned in the picture of sincerity. "That's why you're coming with me." Her blue eyes widened, a flicker of fear mixed with adrenaline. "What?" "To their house." "Justin, I can't. Emilia will be there. Your father-in-law. Emilia and I are done, Sarah. It's just a piece of paper. She knows it's over. This is just a formality. A business event disguised as a party. My contract is up for renewal and I need to renegotiate. The best way to do that is from a position of power, to show them I'm not hiding, that I'm not afraid." He was lying, of course. Emilia had no idea. She was at this very moment, likely at their sterile museum-like home, agonizing over which pearls to wear, desperately hoping this party would mend the chasm that had opened between them. She was a good woman, he supposed. Kind, gentle, focused on her ridiculous charities. But she was weak. She was a placeholder. "He'll be furious," Sarah whispered. "Let him be," Justin said, his ego inflating. "Marcus Hawthorne respects one thing's strength. When I walk in tonight with you on my arm, I'm not just an employee. I'm a peer. I'm telling him the old rules are over. He'll see that I have the guts to take what I want. And what I want is you. And my fair share of the empire I helped build." Sarah's fear melted into a thrill. This was the man she'd fallen for. Decisive, powerful, a rebel in a bespoke suit. What do I wear? Justin's smile turned predatory. I already took care of that. There's a box in the car. Red. Very red. 2 hours later, they were in the back of his leased Mercedes Maybach, gliding through the towering iron gates of the Hawthorne estate, a sprawling 200-acre monolith of stone and glass, known as the Eyrie. Justin felt the familiar knot of resentment tighten in his stomach. He'd been coming here for a decade, always as a subordinate, the son-in-law. Tonight, he was arriving as a conqueror. He had a plan. For the last 6 months, he hadn't just been sleeping with Sarah. He had been meticulously, brilliantly siphoning funds from the Braxton division, the one he quadrupled into a series of offshore accounts. He'd framed it to look like a competitor. Liam Devereux was engaging in corporate espionage. He'd prepared a presentation for Marcus, a smoking gun that would ruin Devereux and make Justin the obvious, undeniable choice to take over as COO. Walking in with Sarah was the final power play. It was a signal that he was untouchable. He would confess to Marcus in private that his marriage was over, that he'd been pushed into it by Amelia's needs, and that he was now taking control of his life, both personal and professional. He'd demand the COO position and a new contract that reflected his true value. Marcus, faced with the public scandal of an exploded marriage and the private threat of his top executive's departure and the Devereux espionage, would have to fold. Justin would get the job, the money, and the girl. Amelia would get a quiet, generous divorce. Everyone would win. He was so consumed by the brilliance of his own plan that he failed to notice the man standing in the shadows of the grand portico. He was tall, dressed in a simple black suit, and wore a discreet earpiece. Harrison Thorne, Marcus Hawthorne's head of security. A man who was, for all intents and purposes, a ghost. As the Maybach pulled to a stop, Harrison stepped forward and opened the door. He didn't look at Sarah, his eyes cold and grey as a winter sea locked onto Justin. "Mr. Hayes," Harrison said, his voice flat. "Good evening." "Harrison, busy night," Justin said, stepping out and adjusting his tuxedo. He turned and offered his hand to Sarah. She emerged from the car, a vision in a crimson backless dress that was spectacularly, wonderfully inappropriate for a 10th anniversary party. She looked like a starlet. Everyone else would look like a senator. It was perfect. Justin tucked her hand into the crook of his arm. "Shall we?" Harrison Thorne watched them walk up the marble steps. He didn't move, didn't react. He simply lifted his hand to his earpiece. "Package has arrived," he whispered. "The asset is in red. Phase 2 is a go." The Hawthorne Grand Ballroom was designed to inspire awe, or more accurately, intimidation. The 40-foot ceilings were adorned with frescoes modeled after a Roman palazzo. A string quartet playing something severe and classical was tucked into an alcove, and in the center of it all, mingling with senators, tech moguls, and old-world aristocrats, was his wife, Amelia Hawthorne Hayes. She was not the mousy, wilting woman Justin had painted for Sarah. She was wearing a midnight blue gown that shimmered under the light of the 3 massive crystal chandeliers. Her dark hair was swept up, revealing the famous Hawthorne emeralds at her throat, a set so priceless it was usually kept in a vault in Zurich. She was laughing with Liam Devereux, the very man Justin planned to frame. The moment Justin and Sarah stepped through the arched doorway, a change occurred. It was not a gasp. It was more profound. It was a cessation of sound. The buzz of 100 conversations hit a sudden muffled wall. The string quartet faltered, a single violin screeching for a half second before correcting itself. Every head turned. Justin, high on his own, perceived invincibility, drank it in. He mistook their shock for his power. He gave a broad, magnanimous smile to the room, as if presenting a new, exciting product. Sarah, however, felt the shift differently. The air became sharp, hostile. The stares weren't admiring. They were surgical. She felt the sudden crushing weight of her crimson dress, realizing it wasn't a statement. It was a target. Her hand tightened on Justin's arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. "Justin," she whispered, her voice trembling. They're all looking at us. This doesn't feel right." "It's power, baby," he murmured back, patting her hand. "They're just processing it. Stand tall. You're with me." Then across the sea of frozen faces, he saw Emilia. Her smile, the one she'd been sharing with Liam, didn't fade. It froze. The light in her eyes didn't dim. It extinguished. She watched him, her husband of 10 years, walk into their anniversary party with another woman. Her head tilted a micro-expression of pure, unadulterated confusion. Her hand, holding a champagne flute, began to tremble. Liam Devereux, a man whose entire career was built on reading rooms, saw it all. He saw Justin. He saw the woman in red. And he saw Emilia's world fracturing. He gently took the champagne flute from her hand before she dropped it. "Emilia," he said softly. "Breathe." But she couldn't. She was locked on Justin, who had now begun his triumphant march into the center of the room, pulling Sarah along with him. "Judge Peterson," Justin boomed, spotting a federal judge he golfed with. "Good to see you. I'd like you to meet Sarah Jenkins, a brilliant analyst at our firm." Judge Peterson, a man who had stared down murderers, looked at Justin as if he were a piece of rotting meat. "Mr. Hayes," he said, his voice pure ice, and turned his back, walking away mid-introduction. Justin blinked a flicker of irritation. Rude old bastard. He pushed on, moving toward a cluster of tech investors. They parted like the Red Sea, murmuring apologies about refreshing a drink or seeing an old friend. The bubble of his narcissism was beginning to thin. The room was not just quiet, it was hostile. This wasn't a shocked crowd. This was a jury. And then the final 2 pieces of his nightmare clicked into place. Emilia's mother, Amelia Hawthorne, a woman who commanded more social power than half of Congress, glided across the floor. She did not look at Justin. She did not acknowledge Sarah. She went straight to her daughter, kissed her on the cheek, and whispered something in her ear. Emilia, who had been pale and shaking, suddenly stood up straight. The confusion in her eyes hardened into something new, something cold. And finally, on the mezzanine balcony overlooking the ballroom, a man stepped into the light. Marcus Hawthorne. He was not the aging, bumbling fool Justin had convinced himself he was. He was tall, dressed in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his silver hair lending him a leonine authority. He was not looking at Justin. He was looking at his daughter, Emilia. He gave her a single sharp nod. Emilia nodded back. It was a confirmation, a signal. "Justin," Sarah pleaded, now actively pulling at his arm. "Take me home. Please. I don't want to be here. This is a mistake." "It's not a mistake," Justin hissed, his bravado cracking, replaced by a raw, desperate anger. "They're judging you. They're judging me. I won't let them." He grabbed 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter's tray and shoved one into her hand. "We're going to talk to Marcus. We're going to settle this right now." He began dragging her toward the grand staircase that led to the mezzanine. But before he could take 2 steps, the string quartet stopped. A single clear chime rang through the sound system. The lights in the ballroom dimmed, and a spotlight snapped on, illuminating a podium at the front of the room. Marcus Hawthorne was already there, as if teleported. He tapped the microphone. "Good evening, everyone." His voice boomed, amplified and inescapable. "Thank you all for coming. 10 years ago tonight, I gave my daughter Amelia away to a man I believed was worthy of her. Tonight we are here to celebrate that milestone." He smiled a thin, reptilian smile that held no warmth. "But first," he continued, "it seems we have some unexpected guests of honor. My son-in-law, Justin Hayes." The spotlight swiveled from Marcus and slammed onto Justin and Sarah, bathing them in a harsh, accusatory white light. Sarah cried out and shielded her eyes. "And his companion," Marcus continued, his voice dripping with mock politeness. "A Ms. Sarah Jenkins. Yes, junior marketing analyst, Braxton Division, employee number 945B. Welcome, Ms. Jenkins. I do hope you're enjoying the party." Justin was paralyzed. This was not the plan. This was not a negotiation. This was an execution. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. It was a dense, heavy thing, pressing down on everyone. Justin felt 1,000 eyes on him, no longer just judgmental, but hungry. It was the collective gaze of the elite, and they smelled blood in the water. "Justin," Sarah whimpered, her face pale. "He knows my employee number. He knows my name." "Shut up," Justin breathed, his mind racing, trying to find an angle and escape. There was none. He was pinned by the light. On the podium, Marcus held up a hand as if to calm the non-existent crowd. "Now I know what you're all thinking. This is unorthodox. A man bringing his mistress to his own anniversary party. It shows a certain kind of boldness, a daring." He let the word daring hang in the air, heavy with sarcasm. "My son-in-law has always been ambitious." Marcus continued, his tone shifting to that of a CEO addressing a boardroom. "He came to me 5 years ago, desperate for a chance. I gave it to him. He came to me 10 years ago, asking for my daughter's hand. I gave it to him. I have given him everything. Our name, our trust, our home." He paused, and his eyes found Amelia, who was standing spine-rigid by the pillar. The look that passed between father and daughter was one of profound shared pain and cold, unyielding resolve. "It seems," Marcus said, turning his gaze back to Justin, "that Mr. Hayes felt my gifts were insufficient." "Marcus, stop," Justin tried to say, but his voice was a dry croak. The spotlight was hot. He could feel sweat trickling down his collar. "I had," Marcus said, gesturing to a massive cinema-sized screen that descended from the ceiling behind him, planned to show a lovely retrospective of Amelia and Justin's 10 years together. Photos from their wedding in Lake Como, their trip to Japan, the opening of Amelia's first children's center. The screen flickered to life. But it wasn't a photo of Lake Como. It was a spreadsheet. "Instead," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a lethal calm, "I'd like to present a different kind of retrospective, a project my son-in-law has been working on in secret. I call it How to Embezzle $4.2 million and Frame Your Rival." A collective audible gasp finally erupted from the crowd. Justin's blood ran cold. He stared at the screen, at the lines of code, the routing numbers, the dates. It was his entire offshore operation. "This is slander," Justin roared, finding his voice. "You can't prove that that's fabricated." "Fabricated." Marcus tilted his head. "Mr. Hayes, I am a billionaire. I don't fabricate. I investigate. For the last 6 months, my forensic accounting team has been tracking your every move. Ever since you first created a shell company named SJ Holdings. What does SJ stand for? Justin Smart Justin. Or perhaps Sarah Jenkins. The spotlight snapped to Sarah, who looked as if she'd been struck. What? No, I don't. What is that? On the screen, the spreadsheet was replaced by a bank document, a deed of transfer for a luxury condo at the Azure building. You see, Marcus narrated, Mr. Hayes was clever. He funneled money from Hawthorne Global, moving it through 3 countries before landing it in SJ Holdings. And what did he buy with that stolen money? Exhibit A $1.8 million condominium. The very one, Ms. Jenkins, where you are currently living rent-free. Sarah staggered back, her hand flying to her mouth. You told me it was a corporate apartment. You said it was a perk. Oh, it was a perk, my dear, Marcus said, his voice laced with false pity. Just not your perk. Justin was imploding. He looked desperately at the crowd, at the men he'd called colleagues. They stared back, their faces masks of disgust and fascination. This was better than theatre. And what of the rest? Marcus continued, clicking a remote. The screen changed again. The remaining $2.4 million that was moved to a separate account in the Cayman Islands. A running away fund, one might say. But here is the truly creative part. A new slide appeared. It was a series of emails digitally signed by Justin, but meticulously crafted to look like they were from Liam Devereaux. He was building a case, Marcus explained to the rapt audience. A brilliant, intricate web of lies to frame Mr. Devereaux. He nodded at Liam, who simply raised his glass in a silent, grim toast. For his own crimes. He planned to present this evidence to me, demand the COO position, and ruin a good man in the process. All while I assume securing a very generous new contract before my grieving daughter divorced him. Marcus stepped out from behind the podium. His voice no longer needed the microphone. It carried sharp and clear across the stunned room. He didn't just betray my daughter, Marcus thundered, pointing a finger directly at Justin. He betrayed my company. He betrayed my trust. And he did it all while sleeping with an employee he was grooming to be an accomplice, using my own money to buy her silence. I didn't know. Sarah shrieked, tears now streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. He lied to me. He lied about everything. He said his marriage was over. He said you were a cold, heartless family. We can be, Marcus replied, his voice soft again. When necessary. Justin Hayes, for the first time in his life, had nothing to say. He was naked. He was eviscerated. He had walked into the party as a conqueror, and in the span of 5 minutes he had been reduced to a common criminal. But wait, Marcus said, a final theatrical flourish. There is one more anniversary gift to present. He signaled to the doorway. Harrison Thorne stepped inside. He was not alone. Flanking him were 2 uniformed officers from the state police. Justin Hayes, Marcus announced, you have stolen from me. You have committed wire fraud, securities fraud, and aggravated embezzlement, and you have done it in my home, on my daughter's anniversary. The officers began to walk forward, their steps measured and heavy on the marble floor. You see, Justin, Marcus said, his voice a low, satisfied growl. You thought you were a wolf, but you're just a parasite, and I have a zero-tolerance policy for parasites. The 2 officers, their faces impassive, did not rush. They moved through the crowd of stunned guests, who parted for them with a reverent, fearful silence. The spotlight followed them, painting a slow-moving triangle of fate, the officers Justin and Sarah. Justin's paralysis finally broke, replaced by a squirming, desperate panic. He looked at the officers, then at Marcus, then at Emilia. "Emilia!" he cried, his voice cracking. "Tell your father to stop this." "It's a misunderstanding. It's business. It's not this." Emilia had not moved. She stood like a statue carved from ice, her face pale, but her eyes blazing with a cold fire Justin had never seen. When he called her name, she took a single step forward out of the shadow of the pillar. "A misunderstanding," she said, her voice clear and carrying, silencing his pathetic plea. "You bring her," she pointed a shaking finger at Sarah, "to our home on our anniversary. Is that a misunderstanding, Justin?" She took another step. "You steal from my family, the company that fed you, that clothed you, that gave you the very suit you are wearing to humiliate me. Is that a business negotiation?" "Emilia, baby, please," he whimpered, taking a step toward her. "Do not," she hissed, "call me that. Ever again." One of the officers, a tall man with a face like granite, reached them. "Mr. Justin Hayes, I need to talk to my lawyer." Justin stammered, backing away. "You can call him from the station," the officer replied, his hand already reaching for Justin's arm. But it was Sarah who exploded. "He lied to me," she screamed, lunging at Justin. She wasn't an accomplice. She was a woman, scorned a fool, who had just seen her future condo, her career, and her reputation incinerated in a public forum. Her nails, which she'd had done in passion red for this very night, raked across Justin's face. "You ruined my life," she shrieked as he yelled in pain. "Get her off me!" The second officer grabbed Sarah, pulling her back. "Ma'am, you need to calm down." "I'm a victim," she sobbed, collapsing. "He used me. He told me he loved me." "Miss Jenkins," Harrison Thorne said, appearing at her side, "you are not under arrest, yet. Your involvement will be determined by your cooperation. I suggest you come with me. Quietly." Sarah, seeing the one tiny lifeboat available to her, nodded numbly. Harrison helped her up, and with a firm hand on her elbow, steered her out a side door, away from the officers, away from Justin. Her exit was as pathetic as her entrance had been brazen. Now Justin was alone. The first officer grabbed his left arm. Justin, in a last futile burst of arrogant rage, tried to yank it free. "Don't you touch me! Do you know who I am?" The officer didn't answer. He simply applied a pressure point lock to Justin's wrist, the one adorned with the $50,000 Rolex, and spun him around, forcing his hands behind his back. Justin cried out as the cold steel of the handcuffs clicked shut. The Rolex, Emilia's final gift, glinted pathetically under the spotlight. "Justin Hayes," the officer recited, "you are under arrest for suspicion of wire fraud and grand larceny. You have the right to remain silent." The room watched, mesmerized, as the man who had been an hour ago one of them, a titan of industry, a member of the elite, was read his rights like a common street criminal. Marcus Hawthorne watched from the podium, his face a mask of cold satisfaction. The officers began to walk Justin out, pulling him by the arms. "Marcus! You old bastard!" Justin screamed, his composure completely gone, reduced to a snarling, trapped animal. "You'll pay for this. I'll sue you. I'll ruin you." Emilia, you'll be nothing without me. You're nothing." Emilia simply watched him go. She watched as they dragged him through the grand ballroom, past the string quartet, and out the massive front doors he had entered so triumphantly. As the doors boomed shut, the spotlight on Justin was extinguished, plunging the room back into a soft, warm light. For a full 30 seconds, the only sound was the distant wail of a police siren firing up. Then Marcus Hawthorne stepped back to the microphone. "My deepest apologies for that unpleasantness," he said to his guests. "It seems my son-in-law's 10-year contract review was unsuccessful." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd. "However," he continued, raising his own glass, "this is still a celebration. The bar is open. The orchestra will resume. Tonight," he locked eyes with his daughter, a look of fierce, protective love passing between them. "We celebrate my daughter Amelia Hawthorne and her newfound freedom." The orchestra, taking its cue, struck up a defiant, soaring Vivaldi. The waiters who had been frozen in place began to circulate again. The buzz returned louder this time, fueled by the most potent social currency of all scandal. Liam Devereux walked up to Amelia, his expression full of sympathy. "Amelia, I am so incredibly sorry." Amelia took a deep, shuddering breath. The ice was melting and the pain was rushing in. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. She wiped it away not with shame, but with finality. "Don't be Liam," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "He was right about one thing. It's a new beginning." She looked around the room at the empire her father had built, at the life she was reclaiming. Would you care to dance?" The Maybach was gone. The police cruiser's taillights vanished down the long, cypress-lined driveway. Justin Hayes stood on the gravel, his hands cuffed in front of him, blinking in the flashing blue and red lights. The grandeur of the Airy was gone, replaced by the cold, fluorescent reality of a police booking room. The indignity was the worst part. The fingerprinting, the ink staining his fingers. The removal of his possessions. His silk pocket square, his diamond cufflinks, his belt. And finally, the Rolex. An officer, a burly man named O'Malley, unclasped it. "That's a Patek Philippe," Justin spat. "Not a Rolex, it's worth more than your house." "Not anymore, pal," O'Malley grunted, dropping it into a plastic bag. "Now it's evidence tag 41B. Take a seat." He was processed and thrown into a holding cell. The cell smelled of bleach and despair. A man in the corner was detoxing his body, shaking violently. Justin, in his $10,000 tuxedo, retreated to the opposite corner and slid down the wall. His mind was a tornado. This wasn't possible. Marcus wasn't this smart. Amelia wasn't this strong. He had been played. The Devereux evidence, it was a trap. Marcus must have suspected him for months. He must have let him build his fraudulent case, all while building a real one against him. The party was a stage. It was a meticulously planned public execution. He thought about Sarah, the fool. She would sing, of course. She would tell them everything he'd said, everything he'd promised. She'd hand them the keys to the condo sign, anything they put in front of her to save her own skin. He was truly, utterly alone. His one phone call was a disaster. He called his lawyer, a shark named Peterson, from a top-tier firm. "Peterson, it's Hayes. I'm at the county jail. Marcus Hawthorne has—" "I know who you are, Mr. Hayes." The lawyer's voice was arctic. "And I'm afraid I cannot represent you. Hawthorne Global is a retainer client of this firm, a significant retainer client. It would be a conflict of interest. Conflict I'm the one who needs. Good night, Mr. Hayes." The line clicked dead. He tried a second, less prominent lawyer. The man's paralegal put him on hold for 10 minutes, then came back. "Mr. Goldstein is unavailable. Indefinitely." He was blacklisted. Marcus hadn't just arrested him, he had cut him off from the entire ecosystem. Back at the estate, the party was impossibly thriving. The morbid energy had transformed into a defiant celebration. Emilia, after her one dance with Liam, had retreated to her father's study, a vast room of mahogany and leather. "He's been processed," Harrison Thorne reported, standing at the doorway. "Bail is set at $5 million. He won't make it. His personal accounts have been frozen pending the fraud investigation." "And the girl?" Marcus asked, pouring his daughter a brandy. "Ms. Jenkins is cooperative. She's giving a full statement. It seems Mr. Hayes told her he and Emilia were separated and that tonight was his coming out party. She's a fool, but she's not a willing accomplice to the fraud. The DA will likely offer her immunity in exchange for her full testimony." "Good," Emilia said, her voice quiet. She was staring at a photo on the desk. Her wedding day. She and Justin smiling, cutting the cake. He looked so happy. "Was any of it real?" she whispered. Marcus sat down opposite her. He put his large, weathered hand over hers. "I think at the beginning he loved the idea of you, Emilia. He loved what you represented. Access, status, money. But he never, not for 1 second, loved you. If he had, he would have known you are not weak. You are my daughter. You are a hawthorn. And we protect our family. How long did you know? I suspected his infidelity. For almost a year." Marcus admitted, his face grim. "I had Harrison look into it. We found the dates, the restaurants. That was a private pain, Emilia. I was going to give you the information, let you decide. But then, my quarterly audit team found a discrepancy. A small one. A crack." He leaned back. Justin was arrogant. He thought he was the smartest man in the room. He didn't realize that I didn't get here by being a fool. I followed the crack. And it led me to the 4.2 million. It led me to the SJ Holdings. It led me to the condo. And the Devereaux frame-up. That all, Marcus said with a dark chuckle, was the final insult. He tried to use my own company to ruin a good man. So I set a trap. I leaked him some false data that made the Braxton division look vulnerable to an outside hack. He took the bait, incorporated it into his evidence against Liam. He sealed his own fate. Tonight was just pest control. Emilia finally took a sip of the brandy. It burned, but it was a grounding pain. "What happens now?" "Now," Marcus said, "we hire the best divorce attorney in the state. We file on grounds of adultery and financial crimes. He will get nothing, not a cent. He will be lucky if he only serves 5 to 7 years. "Good," Emilia said, the word tasting like ash but also like freedom. "Good. Ruin him." The wheels of justice, especially for the wealthy, turn differently. But when a billionaire is pushing the wheel, it moves with terrifying speed. Justin Hayes' case was a media sensation. The tuxedo tyrant. Anniversary arrest. The billionaire's revenge. He spent 3 weeks in the county jail before he was finally granted a bail hearing a judge couldn't ignore. But the bail was still set at $3 million. He had nothing. His assets were frozen. His family, a quiet middle-class family from Ohio, had long since been alienated by his arrogance. He was destitute. He was forced to accept a public defender, a young, overworked woman who looked at his case file with a mixture of awe and exhaustion. "Mr. Hayes," she said in a small, windowless meeting room. "They have everything. They have server logs, signed bank transfers, and a 40-page sworn affidavit from Sarah Jenkins. She's given them every text message, every email. You told her, and I quote, "Marcus is an old dinosaur, and I'm the meteor." That's not going to play well. She's a liar. The wire transfers don't lie, Justin. The deed to her condo doesn't lie. They are offering a plea. You plead guilty to 1 count of wire fraud and 1 count of embezzlement. They'll drop the other charges. You'll be recommended for a minimum security facility. 7 years with parole in 3. 3 years. Justin choked. For what? For taking what I was owed. You weren't owed $4.2 million. You stole it. If you take this to trial, Mr. Hayes, Marcus Hawthorne will be sitting in the front row. His daughter will be on the stand. Liam Devereaux will be on the stand. Sarah Jenkins will be on the stand. The jury will bury you. We're not talking 7 years. We're talking 20. Take the deal. He took the deal. The sentencing was a quiet affair. No cameras. Marcus and Amelia were not present. Justin Hayes, looking thin and pale in an ill-fitting suit, was sentenced to 7 years in a federal correctional institution. Amelia's divorce was finalized a week later. She sat in a sterile courtroom and listened to the judge grant her dissolution of marriage. She walked out, took a deep breath of the city air, and for the first time in a decade felt light. She didn't return to the cold, modern house she had shared with Justin. She sold it contents and all. She poured her energy and her inheritance into the Hawthorne Foundation, the charity she'd always run. But now she wasn't just a benefactor. She was a force. She focused on funding legal aid for victims of domestic and financial abuse. She became a voice her story in veiled, anonymous terms, giving her a credibility that money couldn't buy. Sarah Jenkins disappeared. As part of her immunity deal, she'd lost her job, her condo, and her reputation. She moved to the West Coast, changed her name, and took a job at a small marketing firm, forever looking over her shoulder. Life moved on. The scandal faded, replaced by new ones. The world forgot about Justin Hayes. 18 months later, Justin was released after 22 months for good behavior. The federal system was overcrowded. He walked out of the prison gates with a $50 check and the clothes he was arrested in. The tuxedo was ruined. He took a bus to a halfway house in a rough part of the city. He got a job at a call center selling cable TV packages. His cubicle was grey. His life was grey. He tried to rebuild. He sent his resume out. But the moment any background check was run, the Hayes name combined with the felony conviction was an instant rejection. He was toxic. He seethed. He blamed Marcus. He blamed Amelia. He blamed Sarah. He sat in his tiny shared room, eating instant noodles, and dreamed of revenge. He didn't know how, but he would make them pay. He would find a way back. One evening, there was a knock on his door. A man in a crisp, expensive-looking suit stood there. Not Harrison Thorne. Someone else. "Mr. Hayes," the man asked. "Who are you?" "My name is Mr. Dubois. I represent a consortium of private investors who sympathize with your situation. They believe you were treated unfairly by Marcus Hawthorne." A spark. The first one in years. "Go on." "My clients have a keen interest in Hawthorne Global. They believe, as you do, that Mr. Hawthorne's management is dated. They would like to finance you, Mr. Hayes. Give you the resources to start over. All they ask in return is your expertise, your inside knowledge." Justin's heart hammered in his chest. This was it. This was his second chance. "Who are your clients?" Justin asked, trying to sound professional. Mr. Dubois smiled. For now, let's just call them Friends of Liam Devereux. The sound of the steel gate sliding open was a flat metallic screech, a sound Justin Hayes had heard in his nightmares for 22 months. He stepped out, not into the sunlight, but into a grey, drizzling dawn. The Federal Correctional Institution, a low-slung brick monstrosity, disappeared behind him. He was wearing the clothes he'd been arrested in. The Zegna tuxedo returned to him in a plastic garbage bag, was hopelessly wrinkled, and smelled of institutional bleach. It hung on his thinner, harder frame, a pathetic costume of a life that was now an alien concept. In his pocket was a $50 check from the government and a one-way bus ticket. The bus ride to the city was a blur of humiliation. He, Justin Hayes, who had once flown private to meetings in Zurich, was now sitting on sticky vinyl, trying to ignore the smell of the man sleeping next to him. The halfway house was in a part of the city he had only ever driven over on a highway. It was a crumbling brownstone with a list of rules taped to the door, each one a tiny, fresh indignity. He had a 9 p.m. curfew. He was subject to random drug tests. He shared a cramped room with 2 other men, their snores a nightly symphony of failure. He got a job. His parole officer, a tired woman named Ms. Alvarez, found it for him. He worked in a vast grey cubicle farm for a third-party cable provider. He wore a cheap headset and read from a script. "Hello," he would say, his voice a monotone. "My name is John, and I'm calling today to offer you an incredible bundle on your home entertainment. Every no, every hang-up, every person who cursed at him for interrupting their dinner was a stone added to the mountain of his resentment. He ate instant noodles, the salty broth tasting like ash. He tried to send his resume out, but the moment any potential employer ran a background check, the game was over. The felony conviction for fraud was a digital brand. He was toxic. In the quiet, desperate hours of the night, his rage simmered. He wasn't guilty. He was wronged. He had been outplayed, yes, but not defeated. Marcus was an old fool. Emilia was a weak-willed princess. He had just been too bold, too fast. Next time, he would be smarter. He would be invisible. He didn't just want revenge. He needed it. He needed to prove he was the man he'd always told himself he was. He had been out for 6 weeks when the visitor arrived. Justin was sitting on the front stoop of the halfway house, the only place he was allowed to smoke, when a black Lincoln sedan, so clean it looked wet, pulled up. A man in a crisp, expensive suit stepped out. He was not Harrison Thorne. This man was younger, with a sharp European cut to his clothes and a polite, detached smile. "Mr. Hayes?" the man asked. His voice was smooth, with a faint, unplaceable accent. Justin stood up, his guard instantly raised. "Who are you?" "My name is Mr. Dubois." The man offered a thin leather card case. "I represent a consortium of private investors." Justin glanced at the card. It was blank, save for the name and a phone number. "Investors in what?" "In talent, Mr. Hayes, and in opportunities." Mr. Dubois looked at the halfway house with polite disdain. "My clients believe you were treated very unfairly by Marcus Hawthorne. They believe your insights were undervalued." A spark. The first flicker of warmth Justin had felt in 2 years. "I don't know what you're talking about." Mr. Dubois smiled, a thin, knowing smile. "Please, Mr. Hayes, we're past that. My clients have a keen, shared interest in Hawthorne Global. They like you believe Mr. Hawthorne's management style is dated. They are also, shall we say, friends of Liam Devereux." The name hit Justin like a jolt of electricity. Of course, Liam Devereux. The man he'd framed, the man who had then been unceremoniously bought out by Marcus. Who else would have a bigger grudge? "What do you want?" Justin asked, his voice low. "We want to finance you, Mr. Hayes. Give you the resources to start over. A proper home. A proper wardrobe. All we ask in return is your expertise, your inside knowledge. A consultation, if you will, on the structural vulnerabilities of your former employer." Justin's heart hammered in his chest. This was it. This was the hand of fate reaching down into the gutter to pull him back up. This wasn't just a job, it was vindication. It was his second chance. "When?" Justin said, dropping his cigarette and crushing it under his heel. "Do we start?" The next 6 months were a blur of resurrection. Mr. Dubois was true to his word. The halfway house was replaced by a sleek, furnished corporate apartment overlooking the river. The prison-issue clothes were burned and replaced by a rack of new Zegna and Armani suits. He had a generous stipend, a new laptop, and a single all-consuming mission: find a way to hurt Marcus Hawthorne. Justin attacked the work with a religious, terrifying fervor. This wasn't just a job. It was a holy war. His old arrogance returned now, sharpened by a prison-yard patience. He was brilliant, and he knew it. He reactivated his old lower-level contacts, men who had envied his rise, men who still worked in the trenches of Hawthorne Global. He bought them drinks at quiet bars, offered them consulting fees from a prepaid debit card, and slowly, piece by piece, he began to map the company's new direction. He found it. A massive billion-dollar acquisition in sustainable battery technology. It was Marcus's new pet project, the linchpin of the company's 5-year plan. And Justin, digging through patent filings and supplier manifests, found the flaw. A tiny overlooked loophole in their core patent, a chemical process that was not as proprietary as they believed. A competitor armed with this knowledge could challenge the patent, replicate the technology, and flood the market, sinking the entire division and costing Hawthorne Global billions. It might even trigger a shareholder panic. It would, at the very least, wipe the smug, satisfied look off Marcus Hawthorne's face. Justin prepared the report. It was a work of art, 80 pages of dense, irrefutable data. He was to deliver it personally. "The clients are very pleased, Justin," Mr. Dubois said over the phone. "They wish to celebrate. Tonight, 8 p.m., the Capitol Grill, private room." Justin smiled as he knotted his silk tie. The Capitol Grill. He used to be a regular. He was no longer John from the call center. He was Justin Hayes, executive. He was the meteor finally arriving. He walked into the steakhouse, the scent of money and grilled meat washing over him. The maitre d' didn't look down on him. He smiled. "Mr. Hayes, Mr. Dubois is waiting for you." He was shown to the chairman's room, a private dining area paneled in dark wood. He straightened his suit jacket, took a deep breath, and opened the door. Mr. Dubois was there, standing by the window. But he was not alone. Sitting at the head of the long, polished table, slowly swirling a glass of what looked like 25-year-old Pappy Van Winkle, was Marcus Hawthorne. Justin froze. The blood didn't just drain from his face, it evaporated. His stomach twisted into a knot of pure, cold acid. His prepared greeting died in his throat. What is this?" he stammered, his eyes darting between Dubois and Marcus. "Dubois, what is he doing here? Mr. Hayes, please sit," Marcus said, his voice unchanged, that same tone of bored, absolute authority. He gestured to the empty chair opposite him. "You look better. Prison seems to have at least temporarily agreed with you." "Dubois," Justin barked, trying to find his anger. "Who is this? What part of the plan is this?" Mr. Dubois turned from the window. His polite, detached smile was gone, replaced by a cold, professional blankness. He placed his elegant leather briefcase on the table and opened it, turning it to face Justin. It was not full of documents. It was full of high-end audio and video recording equipment, a small red light indicating it was active. "I am not an agent for any consortium, Mr. Hayes," Dubois said, his faint accent now gone, replaced by a crisp American neutrality. "I am Senior Vice President of Internal Risk Management for Hawthorne Global, a division that reports directly to Mr. Thorne." As if summoned by his name, a shadow in the far corner of the room detached itself from the wall. Harrison Thorne stepped into the light, his hands clasped behind his back. "You've been very busy, Justin," Harrison said, his voice the same flat monotone Justin remembered from the party. "And very, very predictable." Justin's legs gave out. He collapsed into the chair. His mind, which had been so sharp, so brilliant, was now a fog of screaming static. No, Liam Devereux has nothing to do with this," Marcus said, finally looking up from his bourbon. "Liam is 70 years old and happily retired in the Bahamas. He sends his regards. No, Justin, Mr. Dubois and his sympathetic investors were my creation. My consulting fees paid for your apartment. My money bought your new suits. I've been your sole benefactor for this entire adventure." You entrapped me," Justin shrieked, his voice high and thin. "We employed you," Harrison corrected, stepping forward. "You signed a standard consulting contract, and in your eagerness, you failed to read the fine print. You have spent the last 6 months committing textbook corporate espionage. You have violated the non-disclosure agreement you signed when you were first hired at my company, an agreement that is valid for life. And most importantly, you have violated the terms of your federal parole, which strictly forbid engaging in any criminal activity or associating with known felons, which as of now includes yourself." Marcus slid a document across the table. It wasn't a contract. It was a new criminal complaint already filed. Conspiracy to commit corporate sabotage, wire fraud, parole violation. "You see, Justin," Marcus said, standing up. He was not angry. He looked bored. "The first time I told you that you were a parasite. And parasites, well, they just can't help themselves. They have to feed. I knew your ego wouldn't let you sit in a cubicle and accept your fate. I knew, given the chance, you would try to bite me again. So I set a trap, a better one. And you walked right into it, tail wagging." 2 men entered the room. They were not waiters. They were tall, wore grim suits, and had the unmistakable air of federal agents. "Justin Hayes," one of them said, his voice booming in the quiet room. "You are in violation of your federal parole. You need to come with us." They moved to pull him to his feet. He didn't resist. He was hollowed out. He had lost. He had lost twice in the same way, to the same man. He had been so consumed by his own fantasy of revenge that he never realized he was just a puppet, and Marcus was holding every string. As they cuffed him, the cold metal biting into his wrists, again his eyes locked on Marcus. The rage was gone. The arrogance was gone. All that was left was a raw, echoing emptiness. "Why?" Justin whispered, his voice cracking. "Why go to all this trouble, Marcus? I was already ruined. You'd already won. Why?" Marcus walked over to him. He leaned in so close that Justin could smell the expensive bourbon on his breath. He looked at the broken man in the Zegna suit, a man he had once called family, and his eyes were as cold and dead as a winter sky. Because the first sentence was for the $4.2 million. You stole, the billionaire said, his voice a low, terrifying growl. That was for the company. That was business. He leaned in even closer. This is for Emilia. Marcus turned, adjusted his jacket, and walked out of the room. Harrison Thorne held the door for him, then followed, leaving Justin alone with the agents. 1 week later. Emilia Hawthorne Hayes, no, just Emilia Hawthorne, now stood in the wings of a brightly lit ballroom. Her foundation's annual gala was a sold-out success. Harrison Thorne had called her the night of Justin's arrest. It's done, he'd said. She hadn't felt joy or triumph, just a profound, shuddering relief. The final page had been turned. The book was closed. She was introduced to a thunderous standing ovation. She walked to the podium, no longer the trembling, heart-broken woman in a blue dress, but a poised, powerful figure in her own right. She looked out at the sea of friendly, admiring faces. "We are defined," she said, her voice clear and strong, ringing with a confidence forged in fire. "Not by the betrayals we suffer, not by the wounds inflicted upon us. We are defined by how we rise. We are defined by the strength we find in our deepest pain, and the justice we build from the ashes." She smiled a real radiant smile. She was at last completely and irrevocably free. And there you have it. Justin Hayes thought he was the architect of his own grand success, but he was just a pawn in a game he didn't even know he was playing. He brought his arrogance, his deceit, and his mistress to a party, and his billionaire father-in-law brought the receipts. In the end, it wasn't just his marriage that ended. It was his entire world. A true story of how karma, when backed by a billion-dollar checking account, doesn't just knock, it breaks the whole door down. What did you think of Justin's downfall? Was Marcus's revenge too harsh, or was it exactly what he deserved? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If you love stories about karma, justice, and the powerful getting what they deserve, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life drama every single week.